2016 had a lot of interesting events define it. It had everything, from online challenges to sports comebacks and everything in between. Coming off 2015's successes in the video game industry, 2016 was also a generation-defining year for video games, with titles such as Watch Dogs 2, Titanfall 2, Doom, Overwatch, and Dark Souls headlining the top spots. But when I think back to 2016 games, I can't help but think of Battlefield 1. The battle between Infinite Warfare and Battlefield 1 was one of the fiercest competitions between two AAA titles ever, with the eventual end coming with the bombardment of dislikes on Infinite Warfare's trailer. Battlefield 1 absolutely lived up to the hype, and to this day is probably my personal favorite of all the Battlefield games. But what exactly made it so great? Why do people reminisce about Battlefield 1? The answer to these questions is exactly why I'm making this video. This is what made Battlefield 1 so good. Reason number 1. Unique setting. When it was first announced that the next Battlefield game that EA and DICE were going to make was to be set during World War I, the initial public reaction was pretty mixed. Some fans were excited about the new setting, while others were skeptical and unsure about how a World War I setting would work out for a first-person shooter. At the time, futuristic FPS games were dominating the market, and with Call of Duty Black Ops 3 coming off a major first year, the expectation was that EA and DICE were going to try and match its success by creating a similar game setting. Ultimately, the World War I theme was decided upon, and as time progressed, the public reaction became overwhelmingly positive. Fans were impressed by the game's graphics, attention to historical detail, and realistic gameplay mechanics. The inclusion of weapons, vehicles, and equipment from the time period also generated excitement among fans, as something like this had never been done before. Reason number 2. Realistic gameplay. Battlefield 1 offered a realistic and immersive gameplay experience. The weapons, vehicles, and environments were all designed to accurately represent the time period, which helped to create a sense of authenticity and immersion for players. The goal that EA and DICE had in mind during the development of Battlefield 1 was to allow players to experience the true horrors of the Great War. To achieve this, the developers conducted extensive research into the weapons, vehicles, and environments of the era, and worked closely with historians to ensure that the game was as historically accurate as possible. The campaign does a fantastic job immersing the player into the First World War, which leads into reason number 3, strong campaign. Battlefield 1 has a very strong single-player campaign, which isn't always the case with multiplayer-based shooters. The campaign told the emotional stories of several different soldiers from various countries and offered a unique perspective on the war and how it was fought. The developers strategically created different stories for each of the individual characters in the campaign, offering for a fresh story in every level of the campaign. Reason number 4 might be the best reason on the list, the music. The soundtrack of Battlefield 1 featured a full orchestral score, recorded with a live orchestra, which added to the authenticity and grandeur of the music. The orchestral score also allowed for a wide range of musical textures and dynamics, which in my opinion upped the intensity in every match I played. The soundtrack was designed to enhance the emotional impact of the game's story and gameplay. The music is often somber and melancholic, reflecting the tragedy and loss of the war, but it can also be uplifting and inspiring during moments of triumph and heroism in the campaign. To add to the historical accuracy of the game, the music is based on traditional folk songs and military music from the World War I era, adding to the authenticity and immersion of the experience. I've also never heard better menu music before. The final reason for Battlefield 1's success was the multiplayer. Battlefield's memo has always been large-scale battles with many players. The 64-player conquest experience in Battlefield 1 was phenomenal. Battles were intense every match you played in, and still are. The introduction of Operations Mode allowed players to engage in large-scale battles that spanned multiple maps and featured multiple objectives. The mode was designed to recreate the feeling of a real-world military operation and added a new level of depth to the game's multiplayer experience. Battlefield 1 also introduced the idea of behemoths. These massive vehicles were introduced to give the losing team a chance to turn the tide of the battle. Behemoth vehicles included airships, armored trains, and dreadnoughts, and were incredibly powerful and extremely fun to play as. And that's about it. Overall, Battlefield 1 is looked back on as one of the most successful FPS games ever. It introduced a completely new setting and did a phenomenal job in presenting it. Its soundtrack was one of the best we'd seen in gaming, and the battles were nothing short of intense. Thank you so much for watching my video. I created this as a sort of tribute to one of my favorite games, and if you enjoyed it, subscribing to my channel helps me to make more videos like this one. I'll see you in the next one, where I will either be reviewing Just Cause 2 or explaining why Battlefield 2042 was such a disappointment. Goodbye.